gonna let nobody turn me around. I'm gonna keep on walking, keep on talking, marching up to freedom land. Ain't gonna let no.
There has been an ongoing fight for racial equality since the beginning of American history. Even after the long-term controversy over slavery eventually led to the Civil War of 1861, racial inequality persisted to follow African Americans. Although slavery was eventually abolished through the 14th Amendment and black men were granted the right to vote through the 15th Amendment, there were still factors contributing to the isolation of African Americans. The consistent mistreatment of African Americans in every aspect eventually led up to the Civil Rights Movement, a revolution in which African Americans sought to gain equal rights under the law. One revolutionary group known as the Black Panther Party used their radical publicized platform to point fingers at the structural violence African Americans had to face. The Black Panther Party was formed in Oakland, California in 1966, reaching Chicago by 1968. Their militant leadership left an evolving legacy introducing awareness and advocacy for the ongoing movement against discriminatory police violence. Their original purpose was to patrol black communities and to protect residents from acts of police brutality. Their controversial approach of fighting structural racism and challenging police brutality resulted in increased bloodshed and made their popularity debatable. Fred Hampton, chairman of the Black Panther Party in Chicago, was a passionate, charismatic leader known for his impressive talent of community organizing and for negotiating a non-aggression pact between several powerful Chicago gangs and groups across racial lines. Through the work of leaders like Fred Hampton, the Chicago Black Panther Party gained more power and publicity. Their broadening platform worried the FBI, and they began to feel threatened by this association. Working in collaboration with the Chicago Police Department and the Cook County State's Attorney's Office, the FBI formulated a plan to assassinate Fred Hampton. This assassination was one example of many injustices like police brutality African Americans faced due to systematic racism in Chicago.
Although obstacles such as Jim Crow laws were abolished in 1964, discrimination and prejudice was still present nationwide many years after the Civil Rights Movement. Integration was no longer illegal, but there is still this idea of de facto segregation. In such a heated social and political environment, the fight for racial equality needed a new approach, creating the Black Power movement in 1966. In this wave of revolutionaries, a small group with big goals to monitor police brutality and prevent the discrimination of the black race, known as the Black Panther Party, was created, co-founded by political activists Huey Newton and Bobby Seale. Regardless of good intentions, the party was involved in numerous violent encounters with the police and promoted the arming of black people to protect themselves and their rights. In late 1966, they organized their first patrols where they lawfully monitored the behavior of officers and loudly exclaimed their opposition to the unjustly system in rallies. When confronted, the Panthers reiterated their constitutional rights to arm and protect themselves. J. Edgar Hoover, server of the FBI, had concluded that the Black Panther Party had replaced the Communist Party as the gravest threat to national security. The FBI initiated a program known as COINTELPRO in August of 1967, whose purpose was to neutralize the activities of black nationalist hate-type organizations.
So it could be something as simple as, writing a letter claiming to be from somebody else, to a particular group designed to kind of create trouble. They would kind of try to play leaders off one another. They would try to kind of make it so that the Panthers were fighting themselves as opposed to others. And the other thing the FBI unfortunately did a good job of is getting informants into the Black Panther organization.
The Panthers risked their lives as many died at the hands of the police or put into prison. 21 Black Panthers in New York were accused of the plotting to set off bombs throughout the city. The Times media distributed this false information until it became clear 2 years later that the charges stemmed from the NYPD, due to the leaked internal documents by one of the defendants, proving that the FBI used the press to convey a violent image of the party.
Regardless of all the positive contributions the Black Panther Party were providing for black community in a non-violent manner, the FBI still attempted to undermine their agenda. The Black Panther Party had a 10-point program, a set of rules that members of the organization would subscribe to and live by. Newton and Seale break down the 10 things the Black Panther Party requests from the United States government, which include jobs, exemption from military service, and the freeing of all black men held in jails and prisons. The Panthers also created their breakfast program in 1969, a successful social service which provided children in underprivileged black communities with daily breakfast. Despite their success to providing a structural need for the American children, the FBI tried to shut it down, seeing any step forward for the Panthers as a risk to national safety. Regardless, the Panthers worked to install the service nationwide, feeding over 10,000 children daily by 1970. Healthcare clinics and other survival programs were also established where black people can get medical help despite their lack of money or insurance. Fred Hampton also founded the Rainbow Coalition, a political alliance of disadvantaged groups.
Together they formed the original Rainbow Coalition, and then they began to organize and run people for office. The Panthers are important for that. They revolutionize politics. They're able to bring people together that transcends race. Regardless of what your differences is in race, class, gender. So the Panthers are able to coalesce this coalition based on the needs of each neighborhood because they were all the same. Everybody wanted the same thing.
One of the many factors that caused the downfall of the party was the assassination of Fred Hampton. On December 4th, 1969, Fred Hampton, who was asleep next to his pregnant wife, was shot and killed in the Hampton home, along with Mark Clark, another member of the Panthers. Years later, it was revealed that the assassination was a planned work of the FBI. Being a major leader in the Black Power movement and a national speaker against police brutality, Hampton's death was a tragedy which promoted national awareness of the faulty justice system. But without the strong leadership of Speaker Fred Hampton, police attacks increased and Panthers continued to engage in fatal gunfights with officers.
I mean, one of the things before he died, they were tapping his mother's phone. They had informants within his organization. They were sending letters and sending messages back and forth. The FBI basically wrote a bunch of racist cartoons and distributed them under the guise of the Black Panther organization to kind of try to, break up his sort of coalition.
Years of allegations of violence by Huey Newton led to a decline in his power, dissolving his leadership of the party. Conflicts between the members of the party ensued about the future of the organization led to a loss of membership and later the collapse of the party in 1982.
The Panthers had a great impact on the black community, despite the FBI's effort to undermine them. The most immediate impact of the Black Panther Party was the sense of empowerment they gave to the black community. Social services the Panthers established, such as the breakfast program, granted acknowledgement of human rights and were largely successful. In the process, many Panther members were killed and imprisoned. Many police officers also lost their lives in confrontations with the Panthers. Regardless, the Panthers gave the Black Power movement vitality and introduced black entitlement to continue the fight for change against white supremacy.
You have to understand that people have to pay the price for peace. If you dare to struggle, you dare to win. If you dare not to struggle, then goddamn it, you don't deserve to win. Let me say peace to you if you're willing to fight for it.
In conclusion, the FBI felt threatened by the rising power of the Black Panther Party and attempted to put an end to the party in various ways, eventually leading to the collapse of the Panthers shortly after Hampton's death. While the Panthers had many victories as a group, reaching the ultimate goal of complete racial justice is still being worked towards. The party may have dissolved in 1982, but their impact is everlasting. Their relentless fight towards racial equality remains to be an inspiration. Although they were merely trying to protect and arm the African American community since they were being unjustly targeted, the FBI and CPD worked to discredit their movement and make the people of America resent them. This can be compared to the Black Lives Matter movement today, who campaign against violence and systematic racism towards black people. Conservative media and politicians attempt to distort the true intentions of the movement, just like what had happened to the Black Panther Party in their time. African Americans have faced, and continue to face, many injustices as the idea of white supremacy continues to be prevalent. There are still many acts of police brutality not only in the Chicagoland area, but nationally. Today, Chicago is still one of the most segregated cities in America, and in the years 2009 to 2013, 79% of people shot by the Chicago police were African American. Through the 13th Amendment, slavery is still legal under the provisions that the person being subjected has committed a crime and has been duly convicted, and African Americans make up a large percentage of incarcerated people, even though they are a small percentage of the population as a whole. Black people are still racially profiled and sometimes even incarcerated for crimes they didn't commit solely based off the color of their skin. Although a great deal of progress for African American rights has been made, we are still far from an end to inequality.
But I know a change gonna come. Oh, yes, it will.